Hey, it's Natalie. I want you to join me as I show you how to stitch this super cute sweatshirt that I've done. It has kind of some randomy stitching, rough stitching arrows, appliques on it, and I think it's going to be a really cute project. I love this sweatshirt and I have gotten so many compliments on it. So I want to show you how to do this. So come along. See you in a bit. Alright, so for this project, you're going to need a sweatshirt. It doesn't have to be gray. It can be any color you want. I just happen to like the gray with the white arrows. This is my pattern. You can draw your own pattern for arrows. I'll give you the link below so that you can download my pattern if you want to use my pattern. You need a pin cushion, a pair of scissors, some white cotton fabric. I'm using Heat and Bond Ultra Hold. It's a little bit heavier weight. They've got several weights of the Heat and Bond, and I love using this. This is a great product to use. And a good pair of sharp scissors, nice and sharp scissors. Of course, an iron. Ta-da! Let me think. I think that's all that we're going to need for this project, so we'll go ahead and clear this space and I'll get started. Okay, I pinned my patterns to my Heat and Bond, and I'm going to go ahead and just cut this out. And you probably don't really need me to see me cut all this. Now, Heat and Bond has a paper side and a sticky side, and you can kind of see the shine of that sticky side. It doesn't really matter which side you pin that to, but I'm going to go ahead. I pinned it to the paper side, and you can see the outlines of my designs. Cut this out. Okay, so you kind of get the idea. You don't need to watch me cut every little bit, but okay. I want to show you just a couple of little tricks. You probably have already figured this out, and you may not need for me to show you this, but I want to show you how I do this. Instead of cutting all in, out, in, out, in, out around all these little areas here on this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this straight here, cut in, and then cut this away. Now I've already cut most of that away, but so in this little part right in here, I'm going to clip, clip, clip. You get the idea. And then, and let me get this one right here. Clip in, pull it away. Make sure you don't clip that other feather part off. And that's just easier than doing all the little turns, or it's easier to me. If you like doing all the little turns, go for it. This is your arrow. You just do it any way you want to. So let me show you on the tip also. Just a little tip for the tip. Hang on. Look at that. Same thing. I've cut this up to this edge, and rather than turning it and going around that way, I've cut this excess off, clip back into that. And there. And just a couple of little cheater things. I mean, they're not really cheaters, they're just shortcuts or easy somethings. I'm all about making stuff easier. Alright, so that gets all three of my arrows cut. And I've got my iron heating up. And I'm ready to get started. Okay, I've removed my patterns. Unpin them. I've got the paper side up, the textured sticky gluey side toward my fabric, and this would be, if you were using a pattern, you'd have to pay attention to the direction of your pattern, and you also, this would be on the back side, the wrong side of your piece of fabric. So, but since this is just white, that's all I'm not going to get into all the other details about that, and I'm going to leave at least a quarter of an inch between each of these little shapes, and off the tip and at the end, because I want kind of a raggedy edge on it. I've got my iron. Hopefully it's getting hot. My iron is one of those auto shut-offs, and so it doesn't, if you leave it sitting for just a second, then it cools off. So I'm going to hold this. Use your package instructions, your Heat and Bond instructions for how long. I think it says don't move the iron around And so I'm just kind of pressing it in place and holding it to get that sticky. Now I'm going to leave my arrow patterns on. I could pull them off now, but I don't want to. I want to leave those on. Let it cool just a second. Turn that iron off now. Well, actually I'm going to need it again in just a little bit, so let me turn it back on. Okay. And again, I'm leaving me a little bit of a space. So now I'm going to cut this out. If you can see where my paper pattern is. Can I see that? Let me get it against this black. Maybe it'll show a little bit easier. You can see the paper pattern. And I'm going to cut, it's not exact, it's not too big, but just kind of a little edge, so it'll have kind of a little ravelly edge. And again, like I showed you a while ago, I'm going to clip in and then come back down. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this arrow one side so that I can show you this, and then I'll show you the ones that are already cut out. And that's a little bit longer than what I want down at the end, so let me clip that little extra off. And then, and that's a little bit long actually. Take that down just a little bit more. And for those who like exact stuff, we're dealing with about 1/4 of an inch, and that's kind of about what I thought. That might be more like 3/16, but about 1/4 of an inch is what I'm looking for. So like on this part, what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to cut all that. I'm just going to clip in one time. That's it. And then you'll see how, just trust me on this, and you'll see how this turns out. I have my sweatshirt. This is a man's sweatshirt. I don't know that it really matters, man or woman's, but that's what I just happen to have, and what I like the fit of it, and it's what they happen to have at the store because it's getting towards the end of the season, so most of the sweatshirts are gone. But I still think this will be super cute to go into spring when it's still a little bit cool. Of course, we're in Texas, so there's no telling what the weather's going to do. Now, what I've done is pressed out the wrinkles on the shirt itself so that I'm not going onto a wrinkly surface. So you want to do that. So here's my shapes that are cut out, and you can kind of see the paper on there. And then, so now I'm going to peel the paper off, and that little shiny part, that's going to go down. And we'll kind of position this. Now, one of the things, because I don't want this to point to anything like the tip of something to draw attention, so I'm going about halfway down in the armholes so that it comes about mid-chest. And on this little shirt, that's about 2 3/4 down from the neck. I was pretty close. And I'm going to cut that neckline away, but for right now, we'll leave that. And in good light, you can actually see this is where we're going to stitch. We're going to stitch in that heat and bond area and leave this area raggedy. So pull the papers off and turn it. And I've spaced mine about 2.5 inches apart. You can do yours any way you want to. You can do your arrows, or whatever they are, up and down, all of them pointing the same direction. Let me get a hold of this. There we go. And just make sure you get all the little paper off, because if you leave paper on there, that area will not stick. So I've got all the paper off, and I look at my pattern and I can know, oh, see, it's torn, but I've got that piece is not stuck onto my main piece. All right. So that, I'm about 2.5. Pretty close. Let me scoot this down a little bit. Doesn't have to be exact or precise. And about 2.5. Now probably my iron has cooled off again. And the other thing I want to do, again, because this is kind of raggedy, but I kind of don't want, that's 3.5. And that's a little, not quite, that's like 3 1/4, so I'm going to scoot that over just a tiny bit. Again, we're not looking for perfection, but just cuteness. Just cuteness. All right. So let's see if my iron will cooperate and heat back up. Just a little bit of pressure and a lot of heat. I've got it on now. I've got it on the highest setting. And again, if you are dealing with a piece of fabric that has a pattern to it, then you'll want to pay attention, because like I said, this was the glue went onto the wrong side, and now it's the right side that's facing up. So you just have to kind of think that through before you get started on cutting into your favorite piece of fabric. All right, let me scoot this up because I'm on the edge here. Now for my stitching sample, I am going to stitch on a different color shirt, so hopefully it'll show up. So I've got a turquoise shirt that I've already put the arrows on, and just so that pattern, when I'm at the sewing machine, so you can see the stitching going on. Okay, so now I'm going to go get my sewing machine set up, and we'll be back. Okay, on this part, let me talk about this a second. So what I did on this arrow is I went ahead and did a single line all the way around, and I saved the feathers to the end. So now I'm ready to do the feathers, and I'm going to do, I've got 2 rows of stitching so far on the rest of the arrow, so I'll do 2 on this one. And so how I'm going to do that is I'll do 1, and you can see I stopped right there. Give it a turn. And then I am intentionally running these stitches randomly. I'm not worried about, I mean, you could come back and do this like in a zigzag, a satin stitch to get it that really polished appliqued, but that's not the look that I'm after. And so now I'm coming right back down into that original spot where I was, where I stopped that first line, second line I mean. Now, then this will give me 2 lines to finish up this side. So, get down here to the corner. There we go. Come here. Yeah, I could see a little fold in it. All right, and so then now this is going to be my end, so I'm going to do a little back and forth to make sure that I don't get real ravelly. All right, so that finishes up. Clip that thread and clip from the underside. You can't almost barely see that. All right, so that gives me 1 arrow stitched on. So I'm going to move down to this one now. me pause it for just a second and get something else. Alright, we're ready to get stitching now. So I've got my machine loaded with black thread. You could put whatever color you want on there, but I like the way that the black looks. I'm going to start at the what would be the knock end of the arrow, the back end of the arrow, not the pointy end. And I want to do a little back stitch to just kind of make sure that that's not going to come unraveled on me. So a little back and forth there to start off with. Keep my fingers out of the way of the needle. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is my first pass is going to not include the feathers. So I'm just going to go, yeah, and I can see the edge of my Keaton bond. And so I want to be kind of in and out. Don't get that too crazy. Oh, you can get as crazy as you want to. Give a little turn. Make sure that I don't have that little tip caught back in there. I've done that a couple of times. And then have to go back and redo because I caught it in my points in the stitching. Not a fancy dancy sewing machine, just a plain old straight stitch sewing machine. And I'm already starting to get some little frays on the edges, and I like that. And I like this little where it makes that little bump right there. The other thing too is just kind of making sure as I go that I don't catch on the underside the rest of the shirt. So I can just tell that by feeling whether I've got extra fabric under there. It doesn't need to be there. Let me trim this little thread out of the way. Okay, so now I have my first pass, and I don't want my stitches to stay right in line with each other. I would like them to be kind of a little bit wonky-fied, if that is a good word. So I'm going to go on a little bit on the outside of that. Now then, whenever I get down to I'm going to kind of watch, I don't have to mark it, but maybe about 4 stitches in, something about like that, or 5. That's going to be about the middle of my feather. And so to do this, turn, get my angle right, and I'm not in the place that I want to be just yet. Yeah, I think it will work. All right, so I'm going to go forward, and then just kind of shift this just a tiny bit, and backwards. And then I'm going to come back to this is going to give me my 2 rows of stitching. There's about the middle of that feather. Now we're going to use this same technique on the heart feather, except that it doesn't have these feather lines already laid in. Whoops, I went backwards. That's okay. I'm not going to worry about taking those stitches out. I want to scooch that down just a little bit. I'm going to go forward, not backwards. There we go. I hope I'm not getting my hand in the way so you can't see. Back stitch, forward stitch. Doesn't have to be an exact point there. Give that a turn. And I think I want that down one. I think that's a little far away from the shaft of the arrow, so let me bring that in one more thing right there. All right, now go. So I'm going to go kind of inside and out. And there's that dip. Kind of where it looks like a beginning seamstress. Although I've been sewing for most of my life, my mom taught me how to sew, and so I've been sewing over 50 years. Had a couple of gowns in Miss America pageant back in the 70s, Miss Texas pageant, so I do actually know how to sew, but this is just too fun. Oops, now see, I can see that I had that little wrinkle going on there. And a little off. So I'm thinking that this whole project would take you about an hour, maybe, something like that, once you have all your supplies gathered up. Get down again into the middle of my feather, a little back and forth. Go forward first, and then back, and then forward. I want to do a little shift and just kind of adjust that angle a little bit. There we go. And we're almost to the end of this feather. Make sure you don't stitch into your hand. I've done that a couple of times. Caught that edge of my finger with the needle, and of course then I jerked it, and that doesn't feel too good at all. Now I could do all of my back stitching right there in that same little spot where I back stitched to start off, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to come down here and onto this edge, and then I'll do my back and forth. And that finishes that arrow. So let me clip my threads. And for this, I don't want like these top threads real long. You could if you wanted to. I'll flip it over to the back side. And there's my other thread, my bobbin thread. Clip that. And that one's ready, that's done. So now, there's what that one looks like. Alright, I'm going to work on the arrow, the heart-shaped arrow, and then whenever it gets down to a part where you really need to see that again, I'm going to show you some extra stuff. Okay, I'm set up for this heart-shaped arrow. I've made sure that I don't have any of the shirt, of the other part of the shirt underneath, just the arrow and the front part of the shirt. I'm going to come in and do a little back stitch again. Back and forth to get that started. Turn my corner. Now this has a kind of a roundy shape, so making sure I keep all of that shirt out from underneath, keep it straight. And the heat and bond gives it a little stability for the stitching, so that helps a lot, because otherwise it would be so soft. And did I just run out of bobbin? No, I didn't. Okay, so now I'm getting up to this little curvy part, so I'm going to kind of pretty much around this curve walk. I'm not using my pressure foot, I'm using my hand wheel to walk that stitch around that curve. So turn, I'm probably going to do about 3 turns to get that little curve in there. And there we go. Make sure I don't have anything jammed up underneath there. Make sure my surface is nice and smooth. There, that made a pretty good curve on that. That looks pretty good. Let's see if I can do it again. So my curve starts, so I'm going to stop with the presser foot, use my hand wheel. Got to be sure you put that presser foot back down so that your tension will be right. Give it a turn, and one more up in there. There we go. Now back to the presser foot. We've got a straight shot. Okay, so this arrow has one complete pass, and I went ahead and did a little back stitch there to stop it. But because this one has the feathers come off and there's no fabric underneath there, well, by the time you get onto the sweatshirt fabric, there's not going to be any stability behind that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of copy paper, and there's like water-soluble embroidery papers and all that kind of stuff that you can use. I'm going to go to the back side to make sure I get my placement right. There it is, because it just only has the one pass. Flip that thread, just because. And I'm going to put this piece of paper, and like I said, this is just plain copy paper, just kind of center it on there. And I just need for it to cover the area, not the arrow, the area where the little extra feathers are going to be. And so in just a second, this is going to make sense. So pin into that, make sure I only have just the one layer of fabric, and I do. Now, I'm going to feed this back up, and I can feel the stability underneath that. And again, if you want to buy some fancy applique kind of, or embroidery kind of wash away stabilizer, you can do that. Alright, so now I'm going to have, again, actually I think I'm going to start this way, and that's just so because I've got to do a back stitch in here, and I don't want all the back stitches in one place. So I'm going to stitch forward and backwards to get that started, and we'll go down about. Now, since I've got that in place, I can take my pin out, because that's going to hold it. That stitch is going to hold it. And this one's not marked. You could mark it. You know, you could use a little pencil to mark this. But I'm just going to set this kind of at an angle. And then I'm going to do, I don't know how many stitches. My stitches set about 3, I think. Back and forth. Kind of like we did the other one, except that it doesn't have white behind it. So just kind of some little raggedy feathers there. Okay? It's hard to see this right now, but in just a second you'll be able to see. So I'm going to do about 3, that's about 3 stitches. Turn this again. I'm going to do 4 of these. And about 3 more stitches. And you can kind of see how cute that's starting to turn out. almost finished. Go back and forth to finish that off. Look how cute those look. Look at that. I love that. Alright, clip that thread. Clip the underside. Alright, now so this paper, what I want to do whenever I'm taking this paper, tearing this paper off, I want to kind of support the stitches because I don't want to pull my stitches out of place. And this will wash away whenever when you laundry this paper will just go away. Let me flip it to the right side. Move my machine out of the way. And that's how that's looking. Those are pretty cute. Can't wait to wear this.